We are taught from childhood that honesty is always the highest virtue. Tell the truth, speak your mind, be completely open, and on the surface, this sounds unquestionably right, but there is a deeper psychological problem that most people never consider. Honesty without wisdom can become a form of self-sabotage. The issue is not truth itself. The issue is the assumption that every truth must be revealed. To everyone at every moment, think about how often people expose themselves emotionally before they have established trust. They reveal their deepest fears to someone they barely know. They announce their ambitions before they have built anything. They confess their insecurities to people who have not demonstrated compassion. Then, when that information is later used against them, they wonder why. But information creates power. Whenever you reveal something deeply personal, you are giving another person knowledge about how you think, what you fear, what you desire, and where you are vulnerable. A wise person understands this without becoming paranoid. They simply recognize that access should be earned. Imagine meeting someone for the first time and immediately telling them everything about your private life. You may feel relieved because openness creates the illusion of intimacy, but intimacy is not created by the amount of information exchanged. It is created by trust developed over time. This is where many people confuse authenticity with complete transparency. You can be authentic without being completely exposed. You can tell the truth without telling the whole story. You can have nothing to hide while still understanding that your private thoughts belong to you. There is also an emotional reason people overshare. Sometimes honesty is not really about integrity, it is about seeking validation. We reveal something painful because we desperately want someone to understand us. We explain ourselves because we want to be accepted. We confess because silence makes us uncomfortable. But the need to be understood can make you surrender your power too quickly. Not everyone who asks about your life genuinely cares about your well-being. Some people are curious, some are comparing themselves to you, some are looking for weaknesses, and some are simply gathering information they may eventually use when circumstances change. This does not mean you should become cold, deceptive, or suspicious of everyone. That would be another form of weakness. The goal is discernment. Before you reveal something important, pause and ask yourself, what is my purpose in saying this? Has this person earned this information? And if they eventually turn against me, would I regret having told them? These questions create psychological distance between emotion and action. The mature person does not suppress the truth. They develop control over when, where, and with whom the truth is expressed. Because real strength is not the inability to hide anything. Real strength is having nothing to prove. You do not need to explain every decision. You do not need to announce every ambition. You do not need to reveal every wound. Sometimes the most powerful form of honesty is knowing what to keep private. Tell the truth, but never surrender your judgment about who deserves to hear it. There is another danger that comes with excessive honesty, and it is more subtle. When you constantly reveal your fears, insecurities, emotional triggers, and private ambitions, you may unknowingly give other people a blueprint for controlling you. Think about what happens when someone knows exactly what makes you angry, what makes you jealous, what you desperately want, and what you are afraid of losing. That person now possesses information that can influence your behavior. They know which words will provoke you, which subjects will make you defensive, and which forms of approval you crave. This is why psychological boundaries matter. We often imagine control as something obvious, someone giving orders, making threats, or openly manipulating another person. But much of human influence is far more subtle. A person who understands your emotional weaknesses can influence you without ever appearing to control you. They may withdraw attention because they know you cannot tolerate rejection. They may question your abilities because they know you constantly doubt yourself. They may offer praise because they know how badly you need recognition. They may bring up an old mistake because they know guilt will make you defensive. And the tragic part is that you may have given them the information voluntarily. This is why privacy should not be confused with dishonesty. There is a philosophical difference between deception and discretion. Deception deliberately creates a false reality. Discretion simply refuses to give everyone unrestricted access to the real one. You do not walk into a bank and give your financial information to every stranger because they ask politely. You understand instinctively that certain information has value and must be protected. Yet emotionally, people often behave in the opposite way. They hand out their deepest vulnerabilities simply because someone appears interested. Interest is not the same as loyalty, and attention is not the same as trust. Trust must be demonstrated through behavior. Watch how people handle the small things you tell them. Do they respect confidentiality? Do they use personal information to embarrass others? Do they constantly gossip about their friends? Do they turn every conversation into an opportunity to gain leverage? If someone casually exposes other people's secrets to you, assume they will eventually expose yours. There is also a deeper lesson here. The more dependent you become on other people's understanding, the more power you give them over your emotional state. If you need someone to constantly reassure you, validate you, or confirm your worth, their approval becomes a form of psychological currency. The objective, therefore, is not to become emotionally closed. That creates its own prison. The objective is to become internally secure enough that you can choose what to reveal rather than feeling compelled to reveal it. You should be capable of intimacy without abandoning boundaries. You should be capable of vulnerability without becoming defenseless. And you should be capable of trusting people without surrendering your judgment. The strongest position is not having secrets for the sake of mystery. It is having enough self-control to understand that your inner world is valuable. Not everyone deserves the key to every room inside you. Protect your vulnerabilities, not because everyone is dangerous, but because your inner world deserves to be earned, not casually accessed. There is a common misunderstanding about authenticity. We are told that being authentic means showing everyone exactly who we are: our emotions, our fears, our opinions, our wounds, our ambitions. But if you think about it carefully, that definition of authenticity is incomplete. Authenticity does not require total exposure. You can be completely genuine while still maintaining boundaries. In fact, the ability to decide who gets access to different parts of you is one of the clearest signs of emotional maturity. Consider what happens when you meet someone new. You do not know their motives. You do not know how they respond to weakness, how they handle disagreement, or what they do with information that has been entrusted to them. Yet people often become emotionally transparent almost immediately. They reveal painful experiences, family problems, insecurities, relationship difficulties, financial struggles, or secret ambitions because the other person appears friendly. But friendliness is not evidence of character. Character reveals itself over time. This is one of the most important principles in human relationships. Observe before you expose yourself. You are not required to distrust people. You are simply required to study their behavior. Watch how they speak about people who are not present. Watch what they do when someone disagrees with them. Watch how they react when they are denied something they want. Watch whether they respect boundaries or constantly push against them. These moments tell you far more about a person than their promises ever will. Someone can tell you, "You can trust me," but trust is not established by a sentence. It is established through repeated behavior. And this becomes especially important because people have different reasons for wanting access to you. One person may genuinely want to understand you. Another may be fascinated by your weaknesses. Another may be comparing your life to theirs. Another may simply enjoy collecting information. You cannot always know which one you are dealing with at the beginning. That is why gradual disclosure is so powerful. You do not need to reveal your deepest thoughts immediately. Allow people to earn greater access through consistency. Give them something small and observe what they do with it. If they demonstrate respect, you can gradually open another door. This creates a natural psychological filter. The irony is that people who desperately want to be understood often reveal too much too quickly. They believe that if someone knows everything about them, that person will finally accept them. But genuine connection does not require emotional exposure without limits. Healthy relationships contain both openness and mystery. They allow two people to know each other deeply while still respecting individuality. You should never have to perform a false personality. You should never have to pretend to be stronger, happier, or more confident than you are. but neither should you feel obligated to turn your private life into public property. There is tremendous freedom in realizing that you do not need everyone to understand you. Some people will misunderstand you. Let them. Your responsibility is not to control every person's perception of you. Your responsibility is to know yourself clearly enough that their perception does not determine your identity. Authenticity is not standing before the world with every door unlocked. It is knowing which doors exist and deciding who has earned the right to enter. Be genuine with everyone, but give deep access only to those whose character has earned it. There is another trap hidden inside the idea of honesty, the belief that because something is true, saying it must automatically be the right thing to do. It isn't. Truth and timing are inseparable. You can say something completely accurate and still create unnecessary damage. You can expose a weakness in someone, reveal an uncomfortable opinion, or confront a person about their behavior, and technically be telling the truth, while accomplishing nothing except creating resistance. This is where emotional honesty becomes different from disciplined honesty. When people are angry, hurt, jealous, or frustrated, they often feel an intense need to speak. They tell themselves, "I'm just being honest." But sometimes what they call honesty is simply an emotion searching for an outlet. Think about an argument. Someone says something that hurts you, and suddenly you want to explain everything you have been holding inside. You bring up old mistakes. You reveal what you really think about them. You expose private information. For a few minutes, you feel powerful because you finally said what was on your mind. But then the emotional intensity disappears, and you are left with consequences. Words cannot be retrieved once they enter another person's mind. This is why self-control is more valuable than verbal courage. Anyone can speak impulsively. It takes discipline to remain silent long enough to understand what your words will produce. Before saying something difficult, ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? And is this the right moment? The first question protects you from deception. The second protects you from unnecessary conflict. The third protects you from poor timing. Because timing changes the meaning of truth. Imagine telling someone about a serious mistake immediately after they have experienced a major failure. You may be correct, but they may be incapable of hearing the lesson. The same words delivered later, when their emotions have settled, may actually help them. This principle applies not only to conflict, but to relationships, business, leadership, and everyday communication. There's a difference between having an opinion and needing to announce it. There is a difference between noticing someone's weakness and exposing it. And there's a difference between confronting someone because you want a better outcome and confronting them because you want them to suffer. The mature person learns to recognize that difference. Silence, therefore, should not be viewed as weakness. Sometimes silence is the space in which judgment develops. It gives you time to separate what you feel from what you actually believe. And this is especially important when dealing with people who provoke you intentionally. If someone knows that you react immediately, they can control the rhythm of the interaction. They push a button, you respond. They create tension, you explain. They accuse you, you defend yourself. Eventually, they don't even need to control your actions directly. They simply control your emotional reactions. The moment you become capable of pausing, that dynamic changes. You regain choice. You begin to understand that you don't have to respond to every accusation, correct every misunderstanding, or reveal every thought. Sometimes the strongest response is a measured one. Sometimes it is a delayed response. And sometimes it is no response at all. The goal is not to become silent or emotionally distant. The goal is to make your words deliberate rather than automatic, because honesty without self-control becomes impulsiveness, and truth without wisdom can become destruction. Do not ask only, "Is it true?" Ask, "What will my truth create?" Once you understand the danger of revealing too much, the next question becomes, how do you remain open without becoming exposed? The answer is not deception, it is selective disclosure. Selective disclosure means understanding that information has context, timing, and value. You do not have to tell everyone everything simply because they ask. You can be honest while allowing trust to develop gradually. Think about how trust actually works. It is rarely created by one dramatic conversation. It is built through hundreds of small observations. Someone keeps their word, they respect a boundary, they do not exploit an embarrassing moment. They do not turn your private information into entertainment. They remain consistent when there is nothing to gain from being loyal. These small behaviors reveal character. So instead of asking, "Do I like this person?" ask a more useful question. How does this person behave when they have nothing to gain from me? That question can save you from enormous disappointment, because people often reveal their character when there is an opportunity to exploit information. Give someone a small piece of personal information and observe what happens. Does it remain private? Does it somehow appear in another conversation? Does the person use it to make you feel insecure later? You are learning. And this process should not feel like a psychological game. It is simply observation. You are allowing reality to provide evidence before you make a judgment. There is also wisdom in controlling the pace of intimacy. Modern culture often encourages instant closeness. Someone tells you their deepest secret, and suddenly you feel obligated to tell them yours. Someone shares an emotional story, and you believe you must respond with an equally personal confession. But emotional intensity is not necessarily intimacy. Two people can have a powerful conversation and still know very little about each other's character. Real trust requires time because time exposes patterns. A person may behave perfectly for a week. It is much harder to maintain a false character for months or years. This is why patience becomes a form of protection. You can reveal yourself in layers. Start with what is appropriate to the relationship. Observe their response. Allow consistency to determine whether deeper access is deserved. And remember that boundaries are not walls designed to keep everyone out. They are filters designed to let the right people come closer safely. There is another advantage to selective disclosure. It gives you greater control over your own identity. When you constantly explain yourself, you become dependent on other people's reactions. You start modifying your behavior according to what they approve of. You reveal another piece of yourself, wait for validation, then reveal another. Eventually, your sense of self becomes entangled with the opinions of others. Selective disclosure breaks that pattern. You learn that not every thought needs an audience, not every dream needs an announcement, not every wound needs an explanation. Some things become stronger when they are allowed to develop privately. Your ambitions can grow before they are judged. Your healing can happen before it is discussed. Your plans can mature before outside opinions interfere with them. This does not mean living secretly. It means understanding that privacy gives certain things room to develop. So become generous with your kindness, honest with your principles, and careful with your private information. Let people earn access through consistency rather than receiving it through familiarity. Because trust should never be granted simply because someone asks for it. Reveal yourself gradually. Let people's behavior decide how deeply they deserve to know you. And this brings us to the final lesson. The goal is not to become dishonest. The goal is to become disciplined with the truth. There is a great difference between lying and refusing to reveal everything. A lie attempts to manipulate another person's perception of reality. A boundary simply says, "This part of my life is private." You can be honest, honorable, and trustworthy while still keeping certain thoughts, plans, emotions, and experiences to yourself. In fact, one of the clearest signs of maturity is realizing that you do not have to explain yourself constantly. Think about how often people feel compelled to justify their decisions. Someone criticizes their choice, and immediately they begin explaining. Someone misunderstands them, and they feel desperate to correct the misunderstanding. Someone questions their ambition, and they begin defending why they want it. But every explanation creates another opportunity for judgment. The more you depend on other people understanding your choices, the more control they have over your emotional state. There will always be people who misunderstand you. There will always be people who judge your decisions without knowing the circumstances behind them. If you spend your life correcting every perception, you will eventually exhaust yourself trying to manage something you cannot control. A stronger approach is to let your actions speak over time. If your decision is sound, time can reveal it. If your character is genuine, consistency can demonstrate it. If your intentions are honorable, you do not need to announce them repeatedly. This is where unpredictability can also become a form of psychological freedom. When people know exactly what makes you angry, what makes you insecure, what you desperately want, and how you will respond to pressure, they can anticipate you. And what can be anticipated can often be influenced. But when you develop emotional control, you become less predictable in the healthiest sense. You do not react automatically. You pause, you observe, you decide. Someone provokes you, and instead of immediately defending yourself, you consider whether the situation deserves your energy. Someone criticizes you, and instead of instantly explaining yourself, you ask whether there is anything useful in the criticism. Someone tries to pressure you into revealing something personal, and you recognize that you have the right to remain silent. This is not manipulation, it is self-possession. The philosophical lesson is deeper than simply learning when to speak. It is learning that your inner world does not belong to the crowd. Your fears belong to you. Your plans belong to you. Your private struggles belong to you. You can share them when sharing creates connection, healing, or understanding. But you should never feel obligated to reveal them merely because someone demands access. And perhaps this is what genuine confidence looks like. You stop trying to prove that you are honest. You simply become a person whose actions are consistent with their values. You keep your promises, you admit your mistakes, you speak truthfully, but you also understand silence, timing, privacy, and boundaries. You become honest without becoming exposed. You become open without becoming vulnerable to everyone. And you become authentic without becoming predictable. The world does not need access to every part of you to recognize your strength. Live honestly, speak deliberately, and remember, your truth is powerful, but your judgment decides who deserves to hear it.